Welcome to our podcast, Doing It Right. This podcast reveals authentic stories from successful leaders doing it right. It's about their journey to become a leader, their choices, motivations, and lessons. In essence, how they built successful personal brands. Your host is Valerie Sokolowski, author of 8 leadership books and nationally known as an authority on executive presence and personal branding. Let's get started. Here's Valerie.
Well, good morning and good afternoon and hello to all of you. We've got a show today that I think will touch everyone because it's about having a can-do attitude. And we all know that in order to do things right, that's the kind of attitude we got to have. Before we start, I do want to thank again the Betty Ryder Boutique in Northwest Highway Plaza. It's designer clothing for the woman who is discerning, so stop by. Today, we've heard a lot about positive attitude. We all know that that's important, right? And it makes such a difference in whether we succeed or fail. We know that too. In fact, if you write the word attitude out on a piece of paper, if you haven't tried this before, do it. Just write the word attitude on a piece of paper and then assign a number to each of the letters. So example, A is number 1, T is number 20, and if you add the numbers up, it equals 100. And that simply means attitude is 100% of what's really important in life, even more than your skill set. My guest today is Robin Daniels. She's a leader with an anything is possible attitude, and it uplifts all who are around her, including me. We've had such a great conversation already this morning. You'll see in a minute. She's Vice President of Marketing, Communications, and Admissions for McMurray University in Abilene, Texas. I wanted her to be a guest on the show today because she has maintained an I can do anything attitude when she could have easily fallen back in her journey of life into the doldrums, and she didn't. So I want to welcome you, Robin. You came all the way from Abilene.
Yes, I did.
How far was that?
It was about 3 hours from here. So it's in West Texas, or I call it West Texas. They call Abilene Big Country. So it's big country. But I headed back. It was kind of going back home because I was originally from Big Spring, which is a little farther than Abilene, before I came to Dallas. And I headed back to Abilene in December when I accepted the position at McMurray University. And I have had so much fun every day since I've been back in big country.
As we talked this morning, I said to you, you are just beaming. So I want to hear, first of all, the title of our podcast today was I Can Do Anything. You really talked about the I am possible. Mm-hmm. Tell us about that little quote.
I always admired Audrey Hepburn and also Katharine Hepburn, just for their independence and their grace. And when I ran across Audrey Hepburn's quote that nothing is impossible, the word itself says I'm possible, a light bulb went off in my head. And it has been something that has driven me every day since I really discovered it as something that was important to me, is that possibility is about realizing that you're possible. Possibility is about not accepting defeat, but finding a road. It may be a different path, it may be, but you can get to the end of the journey, or the journey may change along the way, and not to get upset, but to rather accept the new challenge, the new opportunity, or whatever is in front of you.
All right, so let's talk about that journey. You were an entrepreneur. You had your own very successful marketing PR company. And so going from being a business owner, from there, what was the journey from there and why that led you to where you are now?
Well, let's go back to the time when I really started my business. I was working for another smaller agency, and the agency kind of changed focus due to a move. And so the woman who headed up the agency was gracious and said, you can work with your clients and start your own business, or you can find another job. And all of a sudden said, okay, well, I've done this, why not? So what's possible?
What's
So I
possible?
accepted it. And so for 15 years, I had the fun part of leading a team, going through the ups and downs of being a business owner and learning everything there was about that challenge, from not just being able to create beautiful ad campaigns or do PR stories or do that sort of thing, but really deal with people, look at cash flow, all of those things that as a business owner we have to think about.
Yep.
But there was something that was just toward the end of that journey, 15 years, there was something that was missing. And I didn't know what it was. And I think it kind of came about the time we all were introduced in, I think it was about 2009, to Simon Sinek's Why.
Yes.
Okay? And I realized that I was doing a lot of what and how, but I really wasn't being driven by why. And so that's kind of where my journey. I think I'd already kind of realized a little bit about the aspect of self-branding and the importance of learning who and what drives you, but he really kind of opened the eyes for a lot of us to a why statement and what drives us. And your why can change over time. Your why
Sure,
can evolve.
we
But you're purpose-driven versus the how and the what.
So you combined, what I'm hearing you say is, I know you went through the personal branding process.
Yes, I did. It was fun.
It was fun. That's good. And so what did you get from that then kind of, I would say, cemented when you heard the what's your why? How did those two come together for
I
you?
think you identify what are the important things for you. So you're asked to go through and think about things that are important. You're asked to look at yourself. And then you're asked to ask others to tell you what they think. And the aspect of it is, do they align? Do they align? And if they don't, where's the alignment missing? Is it because you have missed the alignment, or is it because you're not presenting the right message? And so you are able to kind of adapt and learn what you're doing. I had a lot of people over the years that said, oh, once we get to know you after we've hired you, it's so much fun to work with you. But they said, but up front, you're just so stiff.
Oh.
You're just not personable.
That would be hard to take,
Well-
Robin. How did you take something like that?
You don't. You listen. I mean, if you don't say, aha, okay, what can I do? Why? So then you go back and you explore, why is it? Well, there's an aspect to, okay, I want to be seen as respectful. I want to be seen as important. I want to be seen as this. So you have to learn about how do you smooth the edges. And so for me, it was smoothing the edges.
I love that, smoothing the
It was
edges.
really learning and not being hurt by what was said, but being able to say, they're just trying to make me better.
Well, and for the most part, let's be clear, since I have that assessment that you went through, for the most part, honestly, it's very enlightening things that identify your reputation out in the marketplace, and it's, for the most part, very revealing in a very positive way. I think what you're saying is when there's any comment that might be a little edgy, I love you saying, and that's when we say to ourselves, do I want to? You gotta wanna. Do I wanna soften those edges? And so from there, now you've got that. You were very clear on what your brand is. And if I had to ask you that, this is a quick question that I don't know that you're prepared to answer, but I'll ask it anyway. If there's one word, Robin, at this stage of your life, because we evolve, if there's one word that you would say, this word says what my brand is, what's one word that
Connector.
See? I knew you'd do that.
Connector.
Why do you say that?
Because it's about connecting people. It's about opening up your opportunity to share your network of people, or opening up your knowledge to somebody to connect them with something. That drives me. It's fun. It's fun to see somebody learn something new or meet somebody new. And so something that I learned very much in our journey was that I was a connector. I was a kind of a piece that brought people together. And I embraced it, and I enjoyed it.
And not everyone is a connector. You do it very naturally. You just think about, where can I connect different people? And that's a skill, by the way, that can be learned. We know that. But it's a gift when it's something that you do naturally. So take us from the entrepreneur, and then other vice president positions, and finally where you are.
I ended up with the agency. At the end of my time at the agency, I had gone back to graduate school. I had waited a little bit of time to get my master's in business administration, and so, it was something I'd always desired to do. Because of the curiosity in me, and I'd learned things. I'd started as a business major in college, but I switched to art history. I did, and I wanted to kind of go back, and because there was aspects to the business that I really did love. I mean, I loved finance. I wasn't necessarily good at it, but I just loved the concept of finance. I loved the concept of strategy. I loved the concept. And by the way, I was like, you go into a meeting and you go into something and you started realizing that a master's degree was very important to gain respect.
And you weren't 20 when you went to get
I was
your
not.
master's
I was one
degree.
of the older ones in the class, so I will admit that. But the fun part about it was the program was an executive program that allowed us to work with people who were much younger than we were to people that were much older, and bringing together different perspectives was very, very eye-opening for me. And so at the end of that journey, I knew that there was something more for me. And so I went to work for a health system for a while, kind of because I had the marketing and PR background, went into a little bit of fundraising, because, again, that's about connecting people.
Yes, it is.
And that's about connecting a philanthropist to a vision. It's about connecting things. So it was like about connecting till I finally really found the path. The path was always kind of opening to me. I was learning things along the way about myself, about what it meant to lead, I was a leader at the agency, but I don't know that I was a self-leader.
What's the difference?
I think a self-leader is really you are driven by your own goals. While I was driven by revenue goals and things, the agency, I wasn't driven by the purpose. And so I changed to being purpose-driven. And when I did that, things changed for me in how I started seeing things, and the path for where I was supposed to go opened up. And so then I got curious about higher education. I got curious about kind of going back, because what higher education had done for me was open this door and open that door, and I just wanted other people to see the benefit of it. And there's so much discussion about, is it worth it for you? Is there a value to it today? And what is it? And I just wanted people to realize that higher education has its value to you. It makes you to become a critical thinker.
Well, critical thinker, okay. That's a question I want to ask about students that go to the university. What are you seeing the average student of today in university is like? We hear and we are told many times about, well, this is what they aren't, this is what they don't do. What are you finding, on a positive note, the student of today, what are they like?
I think they're amazing. I think they're smarter than we were. I mean, I hate to say it,
sure.
but I think that they're asking the right questions about what's the value of this for me.
Are they critical thinkers?
I hope they leave critical thinkers. I think they come with the thought process, but I think they have to learn what it means to evaluate different ideas and determine whether or not it's important for them, whether it fits into their life.
In your university, McMurray University, you said earlier that it's different in that it has so many opportunities for students who may not know that there are opportunities like this. So tell the audience what you can offer to people that maybe don't know.
Well, McMurray is a small liberal arts college in Abilene, Texas, one of three. It's grounded in the Methodist church, so that's kind of what its affiliation is. And we are small. We've got about 1,100 student enrollment, but it's very personalized. And we hear a lot of people tout small classes, but when you're sitting across the table from an amazing professor, and there's 5 of you in the class, and that professor is focused, what personalized attention. What amazing. And there are some amazing professors there, whether you're talking about a professor of sociology or a professor of biology or a professor of history. What you're being exposed to is people who are very, very much dedicated to making sure that these students, who may not be the highest scoring students ACTs, but they certainly do have potential. They certainly do have a drive. And I saw it in our graduating, I've only been there 7 months now, but I saw it with some of our graduating seniors this past spring. What a drive. I watched one man, a young man who was coming, he drove from San Angelo to McMurray 3 days a week. Okay, that's 200 miles round trip a day.
That's commitment.
Is that commitment? He knew what it was important to do, and he became somebody that inspired me. That is true commitment.
Well, that goes back to your I'm possible.
And he knew it. And so when I asked him, I said, okay, now you're going into education. He says, well, the company that I was working for, he was working for an oil company, has offered me an opportunity that I can't turn down right now because I got my degree. And I said, well, congratulations. And, and then we had another young student who was a freshman. And the Battle of the Flowers competition in San Antonio is an oratory competition. And he was a freshman. And so one of our history professors, Dr. Frazier, said to these freshmen, well, do you want to compete in this? And they said, well, why? And he said, well, there's a $3,000 prize for the first place.
Believe I will.
Okay, I'll try. Why not? So here, our little Reagan went down and got first place up against students from TCU, from Rice, seniors, debate students. But this young man came in first place.
He
tried. A freshman.
I'm possible. There you go.
And he it was the most beautifully well done. He did it for us when he got back. Speech. And so that's the story at McMurray. There are possibilities that we see every day in the students that we are impacting, and how wonderful it is to be a part of that impact.
Yes, I can only imagine when you see young people blossom. And you, back to that quote, it's interesting. Say it again, Audrey Hepburn's quote, specific.
Okay, nothing is impossible. The word itself says I'm possible.
Okay. I just think it's fascinating how you can perhaps read a quote. You did. You read that quote, and that quote was a turning point for you, to the point that now you're running marathons and you didn't even consider.
Oh, you can't say marathons, only half.
Half. I don't care what it is. I can't run around the block. That's amazing. How did that happen?
Well, it was very interesting.
And it was recent, right?
I didn't start until after graduate school. So I finished graduate school in May of 2013. And so my husband, while I was in school, started running again. And so it was kind of fun. And he's like, well, you can run. I'd never run in my life. I had no desire to run. But it was like I had this time available to me now because I'd been studying. I got up in the morning at 4 to study because I was better in the morning. So every morning I had 4 hours of time for studying. So I took it one step at a time. I started. Literally. I did. I started with a run-walk program. And then all of a sudden, here I am. They said, well, you can make it through a half marathon, 13.1 miles. I said, really? Well, I'd made it through a 10K. I'm like, okay, well, I don't have to have a 1 hour time like a ultra fabulous top marathoner, half marathoner. But you know what? If I get across the goal line, that's enough, or the finish line, that's enough. And that's what I did. And so now I enjoy it. It's a fun little, it's a social thing for me because you kind of run with people, you have fun as you're training, and you do things. So it became a social aspect for me, but it became I'm possible, and look at what I have. And then you like the little bling that comes along with it. Come on, do you have the best medal, and what is it? So there's a lot of fun about it, and it's a lot of a feeling of a sense of accomplishment.
And how many?
I've done 15 now.
15 marathons. That really says a lot about I'm possible. And that leads to one other thing. It can be a quote that is inspirational to us, but it's also sometimes something that someone says. You never know what you say to a person that years later they may come back and say, when you said, that really hit. And so just the inspiration that I know you're giving is really important. What at this point is the most impactful thing that you are doing with these students?
Well, I think the most impactful thing and as we go into our next year, we just went through orientation this last weekend, and I see the look on the face of excitement, but I see a look of a little fear. of what's about, because here they've had this, going on in school and high school. There's a little bit more of a schedule. Now they're going to be responsible for themselves. And so now it's about helping them realize they're possible. I'm possible. It's about realizing what they can do, and that if they flunk the first test, as a lot of the professors will say, don't get upset, don't get down on yourself, don't do this. There's a way to move forward. Just keep going. And the philosophy that I've always used with the team that I have, and it's an amazing team. I went in to find, there was about, I think I had a team of 4 there, and I've expanded it to 2 more since I've gotten there. But what an amazing team I had in place. What brilliant minds were sitting there in the room that just needed the opportunity to say, fly, little birds, fly. And that's what I do every day. I mean, I think we talked a little bit about something that was very, very insightful for me from college and from my graduate program was micromanagement, perfectionism. For years...
Oh, were you one of those, Robin?
I was one of those.
Oh.
I'm a recovering perfectionist.
Oh.
And so perfectionism is not the trait you think it is, because perfectionism creates micromanagement. It creates stagnation, because you're never going to be perfect. You're never going to have something perfect.
Thank you very much. I know that.
But I had a great cohort that taught me when we were going through, and I think I told you the story about the first paper that we were working on. It was a simple 1-page paper. And I had
this is it, getting your MBA.
When I was getting my MBA. And we were working on the paper. It was a simple 1-page paper. And let me say, simple 1-page paper.
One page.
That probably should have had 2 or 3 rounds of revisions. When the group stopped me and said, after we got through the first one, said, I don't think we need 12 rounds of revisions next time. There's a point in time when good enough is good. Oh, it was eye-opening for me, because I thought, am I hurting my team? What am I doing? Oh my gosh. And so I quickly worked very, very hard to shift, because these people were relying on me to carry my load, and here I was trying to get the font perfect, the spacing perfect. I didn't want this widow here, and I mean all of those little things that I see. That wasn't what they saw. It was about the content. And so we shifted. And so at that point, I came to understand that there's a point in time to where good enough is fine. It doesn't have to have that final perfection.
Well, that's a good point just in business today, because I'm realizing more and more every day that people want simple communication in every way. Whether it's something you're writing, whether it's something you're saying, whether it's a speech you're giving. Certainly it's in the PowerPoints that you put together. Simple, simple, simple. In fact, conversation is just really very simple if you just have the clarity of, this is the message. You know this in marketing. This is the message I want to say. Now just say it. I remember very clearly, Robin, when I first started doing keynote speeches, and I was trying to make it perfect, like you said, and my husband said to me one day, and it was a light bulb. He said, stop trying to memorize, just communicate. Just talk to the audience like you would anybody. And that was just a switch. So that whether you're putting a proposal together, whatever, you said a 1-pager, and I'm sure you were trying to make it absolutely perfect. So there's a really good message there for that. You know, some of the things that you've gone through in your life and now where you are, what are some things you would want to say to students who are either preparing for college or getting right out of college into the workplace, and as you said, have this curiosity but this fear? So what are some strong messages to say to them?
They're going to hear a lot as they come out of school. You have potential, and that's good. So I think they're going to be honing their skills by looking at other people. As you know, we've probably looked at leadership styles over the years, whether it was a leadership style of Jack Welch or whether it was something that John Collins talked about, level 5 leadership. We gain the knowledge to understand there's bits and pieces of every leader out there, but we are our own leader.
Yes.
And so I think the beginning is about observing, and what my biggest focus now is listening first before I talk, to understand. So as a young person coming out of school, or as someone, early in their career, spend the time listening and observing to see what are the qualities that you want that make sense for you. And those qualities will change. Don't think it, but you will evolve as you go through it. You will be driven by, well, what do you think? It's kind of like when I went through the personal branding. It was a little bit about learning about myself. Today, I know pretty much what drives me. I have to drive myself. I have to know what the goals are. I know what I work for an amazing president of a university. I know what she wants. And so my goal is to make sure that I give that every day, and that I have the personal goals that will help me achieve what she wants to achieve and what the board wants to achieve.
That's a good lesson, too. This sounds really harsh, but it's true. What's important is what important people think is important. It's not all about you, is it?
No,
No.
it is not. You quickly learn that, and I think that there's a point in time to where you know where your position is, and you accept it with grace and dignity, and have fun every day.
Have fun every day. There's one more thing you mentioned, and I don't want to leave without you talking about it, which is when you're comfortable talking about making decisions. When you got such clarity, you said to me that you knew your brand, you knew your strengths, you owned who you were and what you bring to the table every day. How did that then really help you become more comfortable when you're making decisions?
Well, I think we talked a little bit about, early on I was driven by success. I wanted to be successful.
We all?
I want to be successful. I mean, but what defines success?
Exactly.
Success is defined for each person differently. What I've changed is I want to make my contribution, because contribution is about what you bring to the team. There are times to where I have to lead my team, but there are times to where I need to step back and let other people on the team lead, find their voice, find their path to help us, because they have more insight than I do. They're smarter than me, and it's okay that they're smarter than me, because that's the reason. If I don't have people around me smarter than me, and I think I'm the smartest person in the room, I'm doing a disservice to my team. Because
Very
all of
wise.
us, my philosophy, when I ran the agency, we had what we called the 12 ways of Sonus. And one of them that we drove us very, very deeply was, none of us is as smart as all of us.
That's
and
very
I
good.
drove that into people on a daily basis. Do not let your ego get into play. Be confident, but not arrogant. Confident in your ability to drive, in your knowledge, to say, I know, I don't know, but don't be arrogant that you know everything.
Arrogance doesn't take us very far, does it?
It hurts us.
It hurts us.
It stops our progress.
Well, and in closing, the piece you just said is really very valuable. If you just think about what contribution you're making, you will be successful, because that's a whole different mindset. Instead of I have to be the first and I have to make the big bucks and all of that. Success comes, I really believe that. Success comes when you do it right, i.e. the name of the show. Robin, it's been so great having you today.
Wow, time flew.
Time flies, I told you that.
I know, it does.
And
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Keep doing the wonderful things that you are at the university. And I wanted the listeners to recognize, too, that the university is one where you don't have to have a lot of money to go there. There are opportunities.
There's opportunities
to look into.
We have opportunities for students who are interested in a private university, and so we encourage them to think about us and to look at us differently. There are some phenomenal universities out there that have a lot of deeper marketing budgets than we do, and so ours is to show the authenticity that exists on campus every day.
And listeners, if they're interested, can certainly call you at the university, since you're in charge of admissions at McMurray University.
We will get them in.
Abilene. All right. And I want to be sure and tell you that next week we're going to have a fascinating story, too. Coming up next week is about an innovative company that just launched their new name, and it's called Thrive, Thryv, Thrive. I love that name. It's catchy, isn't it? Not only does this company have an all-in-one software app that small businesses can run their entire company on, but it also has what we really want to talk about next week, which is a Thrive Foundation. Now, let me tell you about this. It's a foundation that's dedicated to small businesses and entrepreneurs and making sure they succeed. So if you own or work with a small business, you won't want to miss next week's conversation when the director of this foundation, Matthew Gorgeau, I love that name, Gorgeau, it just falls out. He says it much better than I. But he's going to explain how you can get benefit from their free education, from grants, and a lot more. So if you're a small business entrepreneur, you be sure and tune in. Until next time, stay authentic, build your brand. Be sure you go into the podcast and subscribe, share, and here's something else. If you will send me an email that says you did that, I will send you a brand assessment, and you know which one it is, to identify how strong your brand is. So just go in and share and subscribe to the podcast, then send an email to Valerie@ValerieandCompany.com, all spelled out, Valerie@ValerieandCompany.com. Say, did it, something like that in the subject line, and I'll send you that assessment. I think it's a fun one to take. Until next time, bye for now.
Thanks for listening. To receive Valerie's voice, free monthly leadership tips, and to learn more about her leadership programs and coaching, visit her website, ValerieandCompany.com. Next week, we'll be here again to inspire, engage, and equip you with teachable points of view from successful leaders who have been doing it right. Until then, lead authentically.